Let's talk politics. Let's do it. Man, the meltdown of the DNC, it's happening again in real time just before an election. We've had so much going on. Um, it's ridiculous, dude. One of the most important things in life, I think, is learning lessons. You just have to learn from stuff. You can learn from positive experiences. You can learn from negative experiences. I think it's more essential you learn from the negative than the positive, because the negative generally brings with it something so egregiously nasty and foul that your brain is trained to only tunnel in on that. And actually, what you have to do is try and compartmentalize, detach yourself, look at it, and go, well, this is what, I need to learn from that. So negative experiences obviously carry their own lessons. Some of the most important lessons you'll learn come from inherently negative experiences. The first time you piss on an electric fence and it feels like you've been kicked in the balls. Yep, you won't do that again. So I have to ask the question why the DNC is still pissing on electric fences 4 fucking years later from their monumental fuck up. We're at a stage now where Trump doesn't need to beat the DNC. The DNC beats the DNC and has done it twice. And then they sit around and scratch their heads wondering, well, how the fuck did Trump win? It's like, he didn't. You lost. And you're on course to lose bigly again, with everything that's going on. I mean, if there's so much to talk about. I deliberately stayed off impeachment and doing impeachment coverage because we all knew where it was going to go, right? We all knew how it was going to pan out, right? It was going to be impeached in the House, everyone voting on party lines, acquitted in the Senate, almost everyone voting on party lines, but one or two grandstanding, losers. And then we were going to be back to, going the DNC propaganda media machine coming out and saying Trump's not really acquitted, and the Republican media machine, which is just Fox News really, and Breitbart and sites like that, Daily Caller, Daily Wire, and they're all going acquitted, completely innocent, what a waste of time. So I always knew where we were going to get to. It was like very clear where we were going to get to, but I thought, we'll save it to the end, because just going along and doing little bits, yeah. But that's been an unmitigated disaster for the DNC. The State of the Union address, great speech by Donald Trump, probably his best since he took office. Highlighted a lot of things that I think now, having been out here in Nevada, where, again, it's Bernie or Trump out here. Like, I'm telling you, it's Bernie or Trump out here. Everyone I've talked to, I go to a bar, I'm drinking, people hear the accent, they want to come up and talk to me. Invariably, we get on a politics. It's a nice, friendly, local boozer. Bernie or Trump out here, dude. Like, I'm telling you, that's the line. No one has any time for Warren. No one has any time for Biden. No one has any time for Buttigieg. It just is what it is. So, I've spent a lot of time kind of out here. And basically they can see through all of the bullshit. I was talking to an Uber driver the other day. He said, if Donald Trump is a white supremacist, he's the worst white supremacist of all time. And this was off the back of the State of the Union address, where we've had to admit, right, prison reform, good for the black community, because, as we've been told as a liberal talking point and a statistical fact for years, black people are disproportionately put in jail in our legal system here in America. So prison reform can almost exclusively benefits black people. Then we've got the announced today in the New York Times, must have killed them publish it, a real term rise in wages and salaries for the black community. The first one that's been announced in a long time. So Donald Trump has done that. During his speech, he honored members from an entire black division of American fighter pilots. Had somebody there. He talked about upward social mobility using a black person that had been homeless. and had got themselves to a position where they had, like, I think it was a real estate empire, and they turned their life around from drugs and addiction. And again, it was bad. Now, you might say this is all cynical political stuff, but equally, I'm saying, you know, if any of this gibberish about him being like a white supremacist was true, he's doing a terrible job of it. His first monument when he took office as well, just incidentally, was a creation of a new monument was to honor black soldiers that fought for the Union in the Civil War. So again, I would imagine a white supremacist would be very pro-Confederate. They've certainly ran with that narrative in the media and saying, oh, because he said, let's not tear down the statues of our history, he's a white supremacist. You know, anyway, so this Uber driver was saying, like, it's just bullshit. And we see through it. And he said, like, he'll probably vote for Trump next year, but the only candidate, this year, the only candidate that could sway him would be if Bernie gets through. And he said, I can see what the DNC are doing to Bernie again. And I said, yeah. And he goes, and he said, it's Bernie or I'll never vote Democrat again in my life. And I've heard this refrain so much recently. That's what's going on. You know, that's what I consider the boots on the ground reality of the political landscape for the average American right now. You've got some Hillary Clinton fans out there. She's a non-factor so far this election. No one, I never met a Biden supporter in real life. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is what I said. It always felt like Biden's campaign was going to come off the rails, because whenever I fucking talk to anybody about politics, like, no one ever said, oh, yeah, loving Biden, loving Uncle Joe, love the way he rubs kids' shoulders. Like, no one ever said that, by the way. Like, nobody ever said that. Instead, what the candidates that people were talking about, was like Warren a little bit. I've even heard. I've never heard anyone say they're a Buttigieg fan or whatever. Never heard that. The people that were capturing the imagination have been kind of like Yang, Bernie. I'll be honest, I never met a Tulsi fan in the wild either. These are the people that have the movements that are capturing imaginations and pulling people in and making them want to vote Democrat, among the swing voters. Biden was never there. It seems incredible to me as well that all that polling data at the start, especially with what we know and what we'll go into with what happened with the Iowa caucuses, it does make me wonder how much of that was just hot air and just absolute bluster and bullshit. Because to come fourth in the Iowa caucus and to be lagging by, I think it was like 3, I mean, the results are a shambles, of course, but, lagging about 3% behind Warren is insane. I mean, nobody could have predicted that. Obviously I watched the another reason I was late tonight. I was watching the Democratic debate. Biden's performance was appallingly poor, including a hilarious bit where he wanted to make the point that listen, we shouldn't be sending people to prison for drug offenses, and because they're addicts. And he's turned around and said, what we need is mandatory prison. And he went, what we need to help our drug addicts is mandatory prison. Sorry, I mean mandatory treatment. And I'm like, God, man, he can't even spit out a fucking soundbite anymore. He's that much of a shell of himself. He can't even do a fucking soundbite. And it's like, he needs to drop out, honestly. I think at this point, if the DNC can see he's a paper tiger now. He couldn't beat Trump anyway, and he's not going to win the nomination. That's where we're at. But he will split the vote because he does have some support among the black community because of his association with Obama, who, by the way, won't come out and support him publicly. So Obama's waiting to see who gets the nomination, and then will throw his entire weight behind that individual, and that'll give them a big bump. So, and he doesn't have the confidence it'll be Biden, obviously. So he's not shooting his load too early, Obama. Always a smart motherfucker. So, Biden should just drop out at the moment. Because all he's going to do is make it even harder for whoever does get the nomination over him to win. He's kind of like just distracting from everybody. He should just drop out and maybe accept he can be someone's VP again, which I wouldn't recommend, but he should just bail and let those people who, you know, don't necessarily have a kind of voice at the moment, they should, you know, go behind a candidate that's actually viable. But anyway, why don't we get into Iowa? Yes, Iowa are always a vitally important, you know, kind of part of the electoral process when we start talking about what's going to happen in America, because, you know, they go first, they go super early. And generally it's seen as the barometer for how the rest of any, you know, electoral process is gonna play out. Now, here's one thing I can't do, and don't worry, neither can the media. I can't break down the intricacies of the caucus system. I've never seen anything like it in global politics, frankly, and certainly nothing like it in the UK. It is stupefying and horrifying that we can have a political system that actually can end with a coin toss to see who gets our fucking delegate. Like, okay, America, I'm glad you've been harping on about fucking electoral integrity for fucking 3 years. You know, when all it would take for Russia to interfere with your election is a fucking weighted coin, or one with two tails on it. You know, maybe look at that process. I don't know. It kind of seems that that's fucking stupid. A fucking coin toss, you know. For a football game, fine, you know, to decide who is on what side, you know. But as you'll see, even the fucking NFL have more integrity around their coin tosses than this Iowa bullshit. So, anyway, let's get into this. First, I think I need to explain to you, right? Everyone hypes Iowa on political coverage, and in particular CNN. They were so jacked up on the idea they were going to bring you this critical, you know, what's going to happen, and they did a trailer for it. And far be it from me to say that America certainly has an issue with the way politics are covered and the way the media, you know, pushes political coverage. It doesn't have the same sort of, how should we say, quality mystique that some of the political coverage I've seen from around the world is. I'll show you it. I'll play it to you. It is absolutely insane. Hang on, let me, where shall I go? I'll go just above the play button. Yeah, that's a new thing I'm going to do, right?
And right now, one state cast the first votes in an epic election.
It's time to decide. It's time to move.
The moment is here for Democrats to make up their minds.
Are you ready to send this presidency into the history books?
Trump will be defeated.
Beat Donald Trump. That is our job. And I got a plan for that.
Who has what it takes to take on Trump? It's Iowa's choice. Tonight, the kickoff contest of 2020.
Are you ready for caucus night?
And the field is wide open. Joe Biden arguing he's the most electable with a promise to restore America's soul.
We choose hope over fear. We choose truth over lies.
Bernie Sanders claiming he can energize voters with a promise to transform America.
Sorry, you ain't gonna buy this election.
The top candidate.
How's that worked out, by the way?
Over who can take back the White House.
Hello, Iowa City.
Elizabeth Warren offering a passion for big plans.
This is no time for small ideas. That's why I'm here.
Pete Buttigieg pledging a new generation of leadership.
We are the solution to the problems that we face.
Amy Klobuchar promoting Midwestern pragmatism and grit.
I have won every race, every place, every time. We want to win.
11 candidates in all, eager to challenge the president in the bitter aftermath of impeachment.
Enough is enough. We're gonna win.
Now, It's time for voters to have their say.
We know we need to turn the page.
We are going to shock the
Yang.
world. Am I right?
Iowa is the first stop on the road to the White House.
Let's get the hell up and take back this country.
There is nothing that can stop us.
And tonight will change the course of the 2020 campaign.
Right, so lots going on there. Was very surprised Stone Cold didn't come in. Also, love the bit where it was like the Avengers assemble at the end. What an absolute fucking farce! Like, what a fucking farce! Like, I just can't do it anymore, guys. Like, it's what the fuck is this shit? Like, this is serious, you know. You know, and I have a press conference where they're all fucking mugging each other off at the, you know. Anyway, so CNN were hyping it the fuck up. Obviously, you know, look, I get it's important, but that's a bit cringe for me. But they were going to bring you constant coverage. Now, I ain't going to bore you with all of the details, right? But it became very clear on the night that it happened that things weren't panning out the way that they thought. And the way that they thought it was going to go was this, that pretty much all of the polling data we'd seen before would pan out in Iowa. And that would mean Biden at the top, Sanders in second or third, Elizabeth Warren in second or third, and Buttigieg in fourth, maybe creeping up to third. That was how it was meant to go. That was what national polling data was telling us. But as the results started to come in, there was one consistent story, and that was that Sanders was the guy that was actually winning, you know, having the most representation at the caucuses. And Biden was absolutely nowhere. And there was these bits. I should show you these. I actually didn't highlight these, but I just remembered Glenn Greenwald, the legendary journalist, he actually was saving up. He took all of these videos. So just if you bear with me a moment, I will find you some of these videos. But anyway, what was starting to happen was more and more people were saying like, "Oh shit, dude! Like Bernie's out in front, and Biden's nowhere. Biden is not a viable candidate." That was the consistent message that was coming back from the caucuses, and it wasn't even close. In fact, it was unbelievably sad. I mean, you know, you would see two people there in person for Biden. Meanwhile, just dozens of people out there. Strong support for Bernie, strong support for Buttigieg. We're going to get to some of that in a second. Strong support for Warren. These were the people that were kind of viable in most of the caucuses. What wasn't happening was people weren't turning out for Biden, which is sort of in line with my experience I was talking about at the start of the stream, that you don't meet Biden supporters in the wild. In fact, they just appear to be like some, you know, stay-at-home boomers that haven't followed politics for a while and probably aren't as politically active as you think they're going to be. So, let me just, man, Glenn Greenwald tweets a lot. Hey, I don't know, is that the secret? Should I be doing that? Should I tweet more? I feel like less is more. Anyway, let me find it, because he does have, some of these videos are hilarious, like just unintentionally hilarious. Because, okay, that's one. That's a one. So, right, I'm in there now. I'm in there. Oh, here we go. Right, so here's one, right? So just to show you how little support, please don't autoplay. No. Okay, it's all right. No noise. Just to show you how far off the pace that Biden actually was. Check this video out, right?
Oh, they're gone. The Joe Biden folks are gone. There's two left. There was like five, and they were hanging tough, and now they're gone. One more look at Oh, they're gone. The Joe Biden folks are
That
gone. There's two left.
that is the Biden support, right, from one of the caucuses. That noise you can hear Bernie fans and Bernie supporters. The Biden guys, they were like just literally fucking disappear. They were just vanishing. They were just having like, okay, well, this is really bad. So yeah, this was a super consistent occurrence on the night. That basically everything that was happening was pointing to Biden had sort of flopped in Iowa big time. And also as well, actually, just while we're here, I can show you CNN immediately started to get wind that something was wrong. And by wrong, I mean that we know the established the Democrat media machine, the Clinton News Network. We know they don't want Bernie out in front. We know they don't want Bernie out in front. We know they don't want Bernie to be a representative. How do we know? Well, thanks to WikiLeaks, thanks to Julian Assange, we know how hard the every aspect of the DNC worked against Bernie's campaign in 2016. And we all know Bernie should have had the nomination. And we probably know that had he got the nomination, he would have narrowly beat out Trump, I think. But this is what I mean when I say Trump supporters and Bernie supporters have way more in common than you might think, and they both support candidates that are iconoclastic, that are not part of the establishment political media machine, and you will notice consistently the way the media deals with these people. And again, look at this clip here from CNN, whose coverage is going to be the main focus, actually, of tonight. Here we go.
So the Sanders campaign certainly the loudest tonight, but we do not know what the second alignment was. So it's important to know as we prepare for this evening, applause and enthusiasm certainly is important, but the votes are the most important thing. And I can also, and
we're going to rig those
here to the Warren campaign. So the Sanders campaign.
So you can see again, right? You can see again that is genuine grassroots enthusiasm. Everything you would expect. He had like the most in the first phase in most caucuses. He had the most representation, and it was going on. By the way, this account Moon Cult kind of like shut up. It was getting some great clips. His Bernie in
this
another
is
caucus.
The Bernie group. It's so big that, in fact, that middle section right there with all those folks in it, that was the Joe Biden section, and they actually moved the Joe Biden section because they didn't have room for all the Bernie supporters that are showing up here. So they had to move. They'd allocated space for a Biden group. They had to move those out because it was so small and allocate more space for Bernie support. And you can see they're out of. This was all supposed to be Biden here. It has all been washed away by Sanders support, and you can see they're out of room again.
So that was happening. Then you had this one in Des Moines.
But it is interesting.
But it is
interesting that in downtown Des Moines, right now, at this one precinct, Yang is representing better than an 8-year vice president. But it is.
So Biden was having an absolute fucking meltdown. This is a disaster. And when you think about all the stuff that's come on, I'll show you another one so you can see this is.
The Joe Biden group, probably not going to be viable. Those folks will then go into the middle.
That was the group from earlier, I think, the one in Iowa City. That was reduced down to 2, making him not viable. Here's Joe Biden has the support of 3 people in
This
Cedar
is the
Falls.
Bernie, the Joe Biden section. Not too much. It's the question whether they will be viable or not.
So this is how bad it was. Like it was an absolute slaughter. It was an absolute slaughter. It wasn't even close. Now what you'll notice is, hang on a minute, Buttigieg isn't mentioned in any of this. So people are looking at Warren, Yang, Alpo. Now I understand there's phases to the process, but as we're going to get into, the fuckery that went on is gonna blow your mind. It's gonna blow your mind. If you haven't followed the story, it's gonna blow your mind. But there it is on the surface of it. A groundswell of Bernie Sanders support and everyone expecting Bernie to emerge victorious. It's just a numbers game. That's how it works. So people start, some political speculators, pundits are coming out going, well, it looks like Bernie's going to win by a landslide. But of course, in the mainstream media, they're playing it down. They're saying actually Bernie can't win, won't win. It doesn't really matter even if he does win. I'll give you another example. CNN from the same coverage. This is what they had to say here. This is Terry McAuliffe, and he was immediately jumped on board and started playing it down.
Is it on
what was
the
happening?
Democratic Party? I mean, is it revolution? Is it some other way?
Well, I tried to make the point, this is not the battle soul of the Democratic Party. This is about beating Donald Trump. This country cannot face 4 more years of Donald Trump. And I think for a lot of the caucus goers tonight, who has that best opportunity to take Trump down? We can't have 4 more years of Donald Trump. So, my guess is we're going to have, 2 or 3 folks muddled at the top. It should be a very good night for Bernie. He did very well in 2016.
Before we fucked him.
He should do very well in New Hampshire. But I remind you, these first 4 contests are only about 4% of the delegates. We've got to get through this process, and then we go to March 3rd. 14 states, big part of the delegates will be chosen. A lot of communities of color will be voting that day. So, I don't put too much emphasis on Iowa. I think it's a very white state. It's a very liberal state. I want to see a Democrat who can put the whole coalition together. And if Bernie does well tonight, then he's got to reach out to all elements of this party and bring everybody together.
Now, what is the implication there, by the way? This is the former DNC chairman, right? Basically implying on CNN that Bernie doesn't speak to black voters. What does he fucking mean with this? It's absolutely nonsensical to imply that somebody whose voting history, going all the way back to his work in the civil rights movement, doesn't appeal to black voters and doesn't care about black voters and can't unify white and black states. That is, and when you consider one of the big narratives that was pushed coming into this fucking, complete collapse of the Biden campaign, was that Biden actually is the candidate that speaks to black voters on black issues because of his ties to the Obama administration. When that guy, we all know what his record is with the busing and everything else. So complete gibberish. And thanks for the gifted subs there, Welbers TV. It's good to see you back, brother. So, this is an absurd thing to say on CNN. The implication is outrageous. The implication is outrageous.
This is about beating Donald Trump. Let's be plain and simple. And Democrats, and this hasn't been an overly vicious primary. You think of 2012 with the Republicans, with Mitt Romney and Huckabee. You think of 16 with Trump and Rubio and all the stuff that went on. This has been a pretty good primary. And I think the Democrats have been very well behaved, but keep our eye on the ball. Let's not destroy ourselves in this process. Let's unify.
Let's not destroy ourselves in the process, but by ourselves we mean, Bernie, right? It's okay to destroy him. It's okay to completely, fuck him out of a nomination again for the 2nd consecutive time. So CNN immediately have started, trying to downplay this surge of Bernie because everything that was coming out of Iowa was telling you Bernie was going to win, and rightly so. I mean, it makes total sense. If you have followed just the campaign in general, what you will notice is that Bernie's campaign has kicked into high gear. This is the right time, honestly. It doesn't matter what you did last year. It doesn't matter what you did 6 months ago. That's the whittling process. That's where all the non-viable candidates are going to drop out. They're going to run out of money. We're going to get a much better idea about who has the polling support to be able to keep going forward. And so it's a marathon. It ain't a sprint. It doesn't matter how much fucking support you have when you announce and you toss your hat in the ring. It's where you're at, 3 months out. From when they have to decide who's going to have the nomination. Bernie has consistently climbed in the polls during that time. He's gone from being 3rd and as low as 4th and 5th, I think, at various points. Certainly he's never been 5th, maybe in some states, but, certainly 4th, and he's now climbed and is starting to show signs of, he's going to be the number 1. I don't buy this Buttigieg fucking, as the number one candidate. What I do think is happening is that he's pandering to all the powerful elements in America, the billionaire donors, the people, the media moguls, the magnates, and I think they've made a decision that actually we can't go with Warren. Biden's a flake, and we must stop Sanders at all costs, and this is what we're left with. So increasingly now, Mayor Pete is getting all this weight thrown behind him. But if you think he can beat Trump in the primary, you're out of your motherfucking mind. He cannot. He simply cannot. Anyway, so they're starting to play it down, starting to do things. The results all point to a Bernie win. Some people are saying there was a previous poll that got spiked the week before, about 5 days before we even got into Iowa, and that data had Bernie at 22, clear out in front. And there's a lot of thoughts that the reason that polling data got spiked and didn't go out on CNN and wasn't made publicly available until it was leaked, funnily enough, by Mike Cernovich, and then corroborated by the mainstream media. The reason they didn't announce it is because it was going to say Bernie's going to win. And actually what you'll see ahead of elections, of any stripe, at any level, if a candidate is told, like, oh yeah, they've already, these guys have already won, people might shift their vote because they want to be on the winning team. And it's like a little psychological tool. It can also have the effect that voters don't turn out because they think they've already won. Sure, that's also a phenomenon in politics, but that's not going to happen with Bernie Sanders supporters. They are very motivated. They go to these things. They do turn out. They do vote. They do canvass. It's a very powerful grassroots political movement right now. So anyway, the results are done. They're in. We're expecting them to be announced. What happens? They're delayed. Nobody knows why. Why are the Iowa results not coming in? This should be a very straightforward process. But what started to happen was, ding, it's announced via a statement. We've got to do quality control. Now, I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't know why the fuck this isn't coming up. Let's go again. But you can see it was very rapidly announced that we've read a statement from the Iowa State Democratic Party on MSNBC. The party says it's doing quality control on the results out of an abundance of caution, and there is no estimated time of arrival on releasing the results. Now, this immediately is the red flag, because it should be this process wasn't this much of a clusterfuck last time. And it's not that the process is great, but it went pretty smooth. So what's changed? And critically, what's changed here is obviously, well, apart from Bernie's won it quite clearly, and it looks to me like they're trying to scrub out some of the stuff. There's also all sorts of insane things going on. Let me just show you here, right? I'll give you another example of how fucked this process is and how hard it is to kind of convey to people just how fucked this process is. This goes to a coin toss. If you can explain to me why this goes to a coin toss, I'd love to know about it. So this is the Des Moines precinct that we just highlighted earlier with the no Biden support, and we all had a laugh about it, and Yang outpolling him. Bernie's group had 101 people, right? Pete's group had 66 people. Bernie and Pete end up tied at 4 delegates because of how the mathematics work about it. Because that apparently is within the distance required for a fucking coin toss. And there it is. Here's the coin toss. Look, they're literally tossing a coin.
Tails. There you go. You get the delegate.
It's like, what is this, a game of fucking D&D? So, it's insane. Like, I can't sit here and explain how any of this happens when, there's a much easier system, surely, where you just do a head count. But no, they're not doing that. So you had that going on. There was also another instance here where a Buttigieg surrogate did a coin toss. It's clearly some of the most rigged shit I've ever seen. This is the clip that went viral. You probably already saw this. Just watch how this motherfucker tosses the coin.
And then flip it over. Heads.
So Buttigieg will get 3 delegates.
All right, let's watch that again, by the way. He's being instructed what he has to do. That you have to flip the coin, you catch the coin, you flip it over, and that's the result, right? What? Look at this guy. He's looking at the fucking coin half the time.
All right, so Buttigieg will get 3 delegates.
So, you know, yeah, all right. Quality control's one thing, but holy fucking shit, dude. What was going on out there is just absolute madness. Trying to watch the mainstream media as well, just explain the process and how we're arriving at these numbers. Because by this point, what starts to happen is we're being told Mayor Pete is getting this big surge and actually might have won. This information's being leaked out while they're doing their quality control. Now, none of the video evidence, none of the anecdotal evidence is even pointing to this. And they're doing this scramble in the media where they're trying to explain it to people because people know something is very fucking wrong with what's going in Iowa. So MSNBC, oh wait, that's actually something separate. Wait, I've got the wrong link there. This is, in fact, actually, we can just do this here. This was another one of the guys that was like working at the caucus, a caucus secretary, and they were showing how they basically arrived at the delegates. So just look at this process. This is madness. Like, I can't even understand it when it's explained to me. So you have the first alignment: Bernie 111, Warren 82, Mayor Pete absolutely nowhere with 47. But they ended up with 2 delegates each. And they explain how it happened. So they go, we had 285 people in our caucus, a 15% viability threshold, which meant that you need at least 43 people to be viable. People were already gathered in their assigned areas. It was pretty clear who was viable and who wasn't. Biden had fewer than 30 people. Pete had right around the 45 needed to be viable. Even before we got a count on the first alignment, the Biden people bailed and went to Pete or Amy. When we got to the first alignment, the totals were 111, 68, 47. The unviable candidates were Klobuchar, Yang, Steyer, Biden, and people who were undecided or abstained. On the second alignment, Sanders only gains 5. Warren gains 14. Mayor Pete gains 26. And now Sanders is still out in front, 116, 82, 73. People who didn't want to move across, 11. And then the formula to apportion delegates is the total number after the second alignment times the total number of delegates divided the total number of people at the caucus. Like, mate, I can't do this shit. What the fuck are you talking about? So you can see the second alignment numbers: Sanders 2.44, Warren 1.72, Buttigieg 1.53, and that rounds out to 2 delegates each. And they have this rule where if you're under 0.5, you round down. If you're over 0.5, you round up. So Mayor Pete has done it by that margin to get the delegate, and Sanders, who was close to having an extra delegate, gets rounded down, and this is how you end up at 2, 2, and 2. And yeah, sure, that is how rounding works. That's fine. No problems with that. But this shows the flaws in the system, right? Like, that is not a reflection of how many people were aligned with each candidate, is it? The idea that, you know, Mayor Pete, Warren, and Sanders are all the same and have the same amount of delegates. But this is what's going on in the Iowa caucuses. Then he also said, and we're going to get to this in a second, these are the results I've been trying to report for about 2 hours now. I was on hold for about 90 minutes. CNN wanted to interview about my experience, and in that moment I got off hold but couldn't get on fast enough, and they hung up on me. So there was also this thing going on where they couldn't even report the results in a timely fashion because the DNC chair that were taking the results in didn't even seem that interested in taking them and weren't giving people ample time to talk on the lines. So, absolutely ridiculous. And if you think it's any easier explained on the mainstream media, I mean, yo, let me show you the wait, where the fuck was it? All right, I think this is the one. Yeah, this is it. MSNBC. This is what their guy was doing with the big board trying to fucking explain it all. And you can see here, this was put out by Robert Delaney, who says, "This is funny. Please don't watch if you're not American, or you'll know that we're a failed state." So here it is.
They were all just released at once. What you're seeing on your screen right now, this is the state delegate equivalent category. This is, so the numbers you see underneath, 359 for Buttigieg, 334 for Sanders, 243 for Elizabeth Warren. These are state delegate equivalents. Now remember, there are about 2,100 of these statewide. So Buttigieg with 359, that's accounting for 27%. You can start to do the math of what that accounts for. This is a complicated formula.
Yeah, no shit.
State is worth a certain number of state delegate equivalents. They work their way up. Notably, let me make sure I saw this right. This is the final product. This is the initial preference. Yes, we have a discrepancy right now. The initial preference when people showed up. Remember, these are not final results right now. He said 62% of precincts. We got to see what that exactly accounts for in terms of votes here. But right now, the numbers that the Iowa Democratic Party just released, the initial preference in these precincts, you can see, was Sanders 24, Buttigieg 21, Warren 19, Biden 15. You can see the votes are 13, and you can see what happens. Remember, in every precinct, 15% the magic number. So let's show you what happened then. Again, for all these precincts, this is the reallocation.
Right. So the reallocation.
Those numbers. Now watch this. And there you go.
Wait a minute.
Now, wow. So Sanders on the second allocation continues to lead much tighter. So how does Sanders lead in the state delegate equivalent? How does Buttigieg lead in the state delegate equivalent if he's not leading on the second allocation? It gets into, and I got to take a look here very closely, but my theory, my suspicion here, strong suspicion would be what we've been talking about. These counties are weighted differently here. The rural counties have a little bit more clout when it comes to the state delegate equivalents, and you can see here Buttigieg in dark blue. These are rural counties. Sanders purple, College County, College County, College County. Watch, 52% for Sanders here. These counties lose influence, lose clout in the state.
Oh, right.
And so
that makes sense.
I think what you're seeing is the clout of the Buttigieg counties in the state delegate equivalent, putting him on top.
So, I don't know, guys. Maybe the system, a system based on clout is, far be it from me as an immigrant in this fine country to suggest that something is desperately wrong with what was going on with the caucus system in Iowa. We're going to get into something that's way, way worse, though, guys, because if like me, forget the system for a moment. If like me, you're just wondering what happened in the past 2 weeks where suddenly now Pete Buttigieg is a fucking viable candidate. And supposedly, according to Iowa, the leading candidate. Let me take you through it. So, while we were waiting for the results to be announced, what we had was the media were running out and were saying that Buttigieg was the winner when they hadn't counted all of the votes, because the votes were coming in on a drip feed. And what happened was nobody knew who had won, okay? But Pete decided to say, hey, I've won. So he came out and actually said, yeah, I've heard that I've won Iowa. Just came out and flat out declared victory, right? So, and he did this before they'd counted not just all of the votes, 0% of the votes. So he somehow, in this clusterfuck nightmare system, came out with 0% of the vote in and said, he gave a speech. He said, tonight an improbable hope became an undeniable reality. He told a cheering crowd in Iowa. So we don't know all the results, but we know by the time it's all said and done, Iowa, you have shocked the nation, because by all indications, we are going on to New Hampshire victorious. Tonight, Iowa chose a new path, said one tweet from Buttigieg's official Twitter account. Another congratulated Iowans as having proved the skeptics wrong. The Iowa caucuses hit a snag Monday evening after technical difficulties in the reporting process resulted in widespread delays. Official results were not expected to come in until Tuesday morning at the earliest. So then, right, again, this is apropos of nothing. He knows something nobody else does, evidently. But the media ran with it. And CNN started saying, oh, yeah, Pete Buttigieg is the winner, actually. Here it is. How many times in the media did it explicitly refer to Buttigieg as the winner in Iowa these past 2 days when they only got to 70% of the votes counted? Anything could have happened with that remaining 30%. You can see, this is what they said. Okay, 2020, really set aside the voting delay if we can for a moment here. I mean, the big story here is Pete Buttigieg, small town mayor, came out of nowhere, really. He won, it seems, the first race there, and a big underperformance by Joe Biden. Tell us the effects of this. And they did it again. And this was from an anti-Bernie Sanders pundit, Hillary Rosen. She's well known as being part of the, I'm with her Clinton News Network. And she said, and I just have to say, I can't let this moment pass when an openly gay man has won the Iowa caucus, because now they're going to really push. The DNC didn't want to talk about how Pete Buttigieg is gay, actually. It's never been mentioned anywhere. In fact, I'd seen articles and think pieces on he's not gay enough. I don't even know what that fucking means. I don't know how you've got the gall to tell somebody how to live their lives on that basis, but fine, whatever. Now, we're going to push it out to the forefront. He's an openly gay man. They won't do it in the primary because they want to win some of the red states, but they'll certainly do it now to try and get one over on Bernie Bros and everything else. So, again, the idea that he won is gibberish. It's not based on anything. But they do know something that nobody else knows. Because, as we found out, the reason there was all these problems in Iowa was they were using an app. Okay, they were using an app created by a company called Shadow, which was a for-profit company that creates tech solutions for electoral operations. That was an offshoot of a company called Acronym, which is a non-profit, which is headed by a single DNC operative. Yep, I think the optics of having an app called Shadow. The app wasn't called that. The company that made the app is called Shadow. It's like a Bond movie at this point. We're talking about Acronym, Shadow, Spectre, take your pick. It's ridiculous. But anyway, the app that was being used to count all of these votes, as it was found out, there was a Vice article about it. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. It was an off-the-shelf, this is the quote, an off-the-shelf skeleton project is how it's described in this article. Experts analyzed the app that broke Iowa. Multiple experts analyzed Shadow Incorporated. I wasn't lying. It's really Shadow Incorporated's Iowa caucus app. They found all kinds of problems. And if you go through and you read this article, because the app was obtained by Motherboard and broken down by a white hacker and some other tech experts, I'll just read you some choice quotes. It was a very, very off-the-shelf skeleton project plus add your own code kind of thing. Thanks for the donation, Miss Cray. I really appreciate the $25. Honestly, the biggest thing is, and I don't want to throw it under the bus, but the app was clearly done by someone following a tutorial. It's similar to projects I do with my mentees who are learning how to code. Ex-journalists, probably. They started with a starter package and just added things on top of it. I get deja vu from my classes because the code looked like someone Googled things like how to add authentication to React Native app and simply followed the instructions. The mobile app looks hastily thrown together, said another expert, a CEO of a cybersecurity consulting firm. There's some other things, blah, 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 blah. This is another quote down here from another CEO. For something like this, you don't want to introduce complexity where there doesn't need to be any. The point of this app was to help temporary precinct chairs do the math and get good results in the room and speed up the process. That is a relatively simple function. It's basically a calculator. So how you fuck up a calculator to this degree, I don't know. I really don't. But anyway, it's a very long article, but if you're interested in how bad the app actually was, then definitely go read that article over on Motherboard. You know me, it's not often I'll give a shout out to Vice. This is a good piece of journalism. I mean, the Bernie bros, when they get fired up in the media, they're capable of writing good stuff. The bottom line is, the app wasn't fit for purpose. Now, on top of that, I consider that quite an important thing. That maybe the app that is collating the votes and collating the data isn't fit for purpose. That kind of seems like an important thing that you might want to bring up at some point. Well, let me tell you, the Clinton News Network knew all about it. Say what, Richard? No, really. They said during their live coverage of what was going on in Iowa, they said they had known about it for weeks now. No joke. Here it is. Listen to it for yourself.
But as our team has been noting all week, there have been concerns raised about this new app for the phones that the precincts were going to call into the party using this app, and questions about whether or not it worked properly. We've been reaching out to all the campaigns to try to find out if they know anything. They don't seem to know much more.
They don't seem to know much more than we do. So again, if you're a journalist and you hear that an app that is set to be counting votes in a very critical part of America for a very critical part of the electoral process, and if you've been hearing about it for weeks now that there are concerns, CNN didn't report that once in the build-up to Iowa. They didn't mention it at all. They didn't do any exposés. They didn't run any stories about it. Funnily enough, it had been mentioned in the Wall Street Journal, if memory serves me correctly, that going into Iowa, you might want to watch out for this app. Nobody else said anything about it. People wanted this to be this way. They wanted the confusion. This is by design. They wanted the confusion. They wanted it to be cloudy and hazy because it was very clear that until they got to a point where they could manufacture a Pete Buttigieg victory in the hearts and minds of America and in the media, they didn't want anybody to be saying these votes count and guess what? Bernie is won. Bernie is way out in front. That is exactly why all of this happens. And just to show you, it gets worse. The ties, the app that was made by Acronym has ties directly to Pete Buttigieg's campaign staff. No joke. This is reminiscent of what happened in Florida with the Bush campaign. This is what corruption looks like. So maker of glitchy this is the Associated Press. This isn't, obviously all the press is left leaning to a certain degree, with the exceptions of the one that leaned so far right you can't even take them seriously. But this is the Associated Press, generally considered a neutral source of news. Maker of glitchy Iowa caucus app has Democratic Party ties. So let's go through this. The little-known technology startup, under scrutiny after the meltdown of the Iowa Democratic caucuses on Monday, was founded a little more than a year ago by veterans of Hillary Clinton's failed 2016 presidential campaign, who had presented themselves as gurus of campaigning in the digital era. So hang on. So what you're telling me is, first problem, Hillary Clinton is the person who was responsible for fucking Bernie in 2016. Hillary Clinton's campaign went out and said some unbelievable things. And you've got to remember this about Clinton operatives. Clinton operatives will fucking sling mud. They don't give a fuck. It's widely reputed that it wasn't, they also, Donald Trump started birtherism. No, Donald Trump repeated birtherism. Donald Trump couldn't come up with birtherism as an idea. Donald Trump just repeats things he hears, like he did it today, again with, fucking Pelosi ripping up a copy of his speech and saying she broke the law in doing so. Absolutely not. That is nonsense, and the people that are pushing that are idiots, frankly. The idea that a printed copy of someone else's speech is government property when it's handed, no, it's not at all. Complete insanity. But Trump repeats things that he hears from other minds around him, and this is something that Clinton actually started. They came up with the birtherism thing. There's no smoking gun per se, but if you go and Google it, you'll find out. I think it was tied to a PAC that supposedly supported Hillary Clinton's campaign when she was running against Obama. They were like, listen, we need to leverage But the birtherism, of course, didn't exist before Obama was running up against the Clinton machine. It's kind of weird how that works, isn't it, right? So anyway, there is no dark art, there is no smear, there is no lie that the Clinton machine will not tell. So first of all, she came out recently, if you remember, and said, quote, "Nobody likes Bernie Sanders." End quote. She said this in an interview. She said this again, apropos of nothing. It wasn't invited. This is the same campaign that tried to smear him as hating women. Another common refrain that's come up, this time being parroted by Elizabeth Warren, despite there being absolutely no evidence of that, and evidence to the contrary that he has a fantastic record of supporting women in politics, including Elizabeth Warren herself, which is why people post the fucking snake emoji every time she's on TV now, and her campaign is completely done. It's over. So Hillary Clinton staff make the app that's counting votes and incredibly Bernie, despite all of the visual and anecdotal evidence and numerical evidence too, that he should have won Iowa, this app just decides no. So let's immediately call that problematic. It's about to get worse because why Pete Buttigieg, right? Let's go on. Party officials in Iowa blamed an unspecified coding issue that led to it producing only partial and unreliable results. It did not identify the firm that produced the technology, but campaign disclosure reports show that the Iowa party paid $63,000 to Shadow in late 2019. This scam, this hack of democracy, that's the term they like to use when it was Russians funding Facebook pages. This hack of our democracy has been a year in the making, guys. This, again, it's by design, not incompetence. We sincerely regret the delay in the reporting of the results of last night's Iowa caucuses and the uncertainty it has caused to the candidates, their campaigns, and Democratic caucus goers. The company posted this statement to their Twitter on Tuesday. We will apply the lessons learned in the future and have already corrected the underlying technology issue. We take these issues very seriously and are committed to improving and evolving to support the Democratic Party's goal of modernizing its election process. Shadow Incorporated was launched by Acronym, a non-profit corporation founded in 2017, another important year you will know, almost as if, okay, we need to get something in place so we can control shit for the next election after we lost in 2016, by Tara McGowan, a political strategist who runs companies aimed at promoting Democratic candidates and priorities. McGowan, 34, is married to Michael Hall, a senior strategist for Pete Buttigieg's presidential campaign, which records show also paid Shadow Incorporated $42,500 for the software. This wouldn't happen in a banana republic without there being reprisals for it, ladies and gentlemen. People can say, I see infinite complexity, saying, I am sharing a bunch of conspiracy theory horseshit. Okay then, my genius friend, explain to me how it isn't problematic that the person that runs the non-profit that created the company, that created the app, being married to a senior staffer for Pete Buttigieg's campaign isn't problematic. That Pete Buttigieg's campaign gave money to that company. How is that not problematic? How is this a conspiracy? I'm going to show you more, by the way. Because the one thing you will have to notice about conspiracy theories are generally narratives you arrive at in the absence of evidence. That's evidence, my friend. That is a very clear conflict of interest, and it cannot be argued against that is a conflict of interest. Nobody should tolerate that. The whole everything that happened at the Iowa caucus, it should be considered null and void. So if this is how you're happy, by the way, for your democracy to play out, fine. Certainly, this is the kind of thing I would call corruption. But I mean, again, I guess my opinion's largely irrelevant. which is why you're on a stream, sat in the chat, trying to tell people I'm peddling conspiracy theories. So, it's fine, though. You can go back to whatever wretched political commentator you prefer. I consider that a conflict of interest, my friend. And I think 99% of people would. McGowan sought to distance herself from Shadow's Iowa Reporter app. That's the name of the app. On Monday night, characterizing the app developer as an independent company. Incredibly independent. In a separate statement, an acronym spokesman said the non-profit organization is an investor in several companies, including Shadow, but was eagerly awaiting more information from the Iowa Democratic Party with respect to what happens. Business and tax records show Acronym and Shadow are registered at the same Washington, D.C. street address, which belongs to a WeWork co-working location. So, okay, not only do we have a Buttigieg tie via marriage, not only do we have this company and financial records linking them, the company that is trying to distance itself from the company that makes the app, which they fund almost practically exclusively, work in the same building. This is a conspiracy, guys. You understand? This is conspiracy theory nonsense. There's really nothing to see here. Shadow CEO Gerard Nemira previously served as Chief Operating Officer and Chief Technology Officer at Acronym. The CEO of the company that made the app, that work in the same buildings with each other, also used to work on the company. Like, how many conflicts of interest do we need to stack on each other before we start to see what happened here? This isn't a conspiracy theory. The errors only went one way, and that was to reduce Bernie's votes and to promote Pete Buttigieg with all of these financial ties. There should be an investigation into this. This is political corruption playing out in real time with a paper trail. This will not be picked up by the mainstream media. You know, the same mainstream media that pushed 3 years of lies about Russian collusion and screeching like the Washington Post did about how they hacked a water company's computer and could turn off your water and your utilities, and it all turned out to be false. Though that mainstream media will not pick up this story and run with it and take it to its logical conclusion. Absolutely not. People should go to jail for this, frankly. Anyway, I'll read you the rest because it's a lovely little story. And on Sunday, McGowan tweeted pictures from a birthday celebration that included her husband and Troy Price, the chairman of the Iowa Democratic Party. Yep, that's correct. I've got those pictures. I tweeted them out. So they were all out drinking together, partying, and the chairman of the Iowa Democratic Party was out drinking with members of these two companies as well. So, nothing to see here, guys. I mean, I couldn't possibly think how Pete Buttigieg could have gone on and won this now. So, they're trying to fucking distance themselves. They're trying to say all this stuff. Again, if you don't believe me, I can show you the, I can show you what I tweeted out, just so you can see the pictures themselves. It was in my tweet. I wonder how the DNC will blame Russia this time. Funnily enough, they've chosen not to blame Russia. They're blaming 4chan. We'll get to that. Here it is. So these are the collective screenshots. Not great optics here, folks, says a verified checkmark, Walker Bragman. Dems paid company literally called Shadow to create the caucus app. Buttigieg campaign also paid Shadow, as shown by FEC records. Caucus app fails. Buttigieg declares himself the winner with no results. Then you have here Tommy was hanging out with the CEO of Acronym 2 days ago. This is Tommy Vitor at the drinking party that they're at. Who else was at this fun party? Why, just the national organizing director for Buttigieg and the head of the Iowa Democratic Party, Troy M. Price. And then you can see here, this is the article by the Daily Beast, which I can bring it up if you want to see it, or you can just go seek it out yourself. Shadow Incorporated investors Acronym and Higher Ground Labs are scrubbing their websites of info, linking them to the firm behind the app that fueled Iowa caucus chaos last night. Yes, they're actively covering it up that they have any ties, despite the financial paper trails, because they know the media won't dig too much. They know the media won't dig too much. What, you're going to go after the DNC fucking chair and Pete Buttigieg, who's now the front runner and going to become the preferred candidate of the media from nowhere, just to stifle Bernie Sanders' support. So don't worry about it, guys. Nothing to see here. It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. And then, yes, I did also get linked to people blaming the Russians. Because while this is from David Slack, another absolute insane person. While I can't prove it yet, I feel safe in saying that both Bernie 1 and Mayor Cheat are trending because Russian propaganda accounts are amplifying them. Putin's goal is, remember, they said it about Trump supporters, they were all Russians. Now they're saying it about Bernie supporters. You're all Russians. We tried to tell you about this, by the way. The people that were like, oh, hey, maybe Donald Trump isn't really a Putin puppet. Even Bernie repeated that lie. All Democrats repeat that lie. Now you're getting fucked by the same media machine that lied about Trump consistently from the moment he won the election and a good 6 months minimum before it. They just haven't learned a fucking thing. They just haven't. It's the same political playbook. It's the same lies. It's the same smears. And now they're just doing it to Bernie supporters. Enjoy. There was also somebody pointed out that it could be like a monetary scam. This whole Acronym, Shadow, Pete Buttigieg, kind of a triangle. There were people talking about how it could have been a monetary scam on top of everything else. This is from Maggie Sevens. New, it's the cover-up that fucking kills you. Democrats are stewing about Tara McGowan, the talented but divisive strategist whose non-profit Acronym raised eyebrows in Washington even before Shadow became a household name. Democrats are perplexed by the structure of Acronym, a non-profit that contains for-profit companies like Shadow. It's moving money around in a way that's unclear, one Democratic operative says. This is over in Politico in an article called Angry Dems Unload on Operative Atop the Digital Empire That Broke Iowa. And you can go and look at it. They're saying there's some potential financial irregularities there about, how all the money gets moved around and everything else. So, let's move on. Let's get away from that issue. Let's talk about how the media have subsequently pushed everything that's been going on. When 100% of the votes came out, it showed that Sanders was like 0.1% behind Buttigieg. But let's just also look at some of the reactions that we've seen in the media. What basically happened. First of all, I think this is just a good clip to show you by another pundit called Chris. This is from Crystal Ball, and you can see here. I'll just play you this. This must have chewed CNN up inside, having to play this clip, because they had to admit that somebody who said that Sanders actually was going to be very viable and a potential winner of Iowa was correct, and it was their political assessments, which have included clips of people saying Bernie Sanders is done, he's toast, because they're trying to, they're trying to demoralize his support. They are using propaganda techniques to demoralize Bernie Sanders supporters. This is just a great clip because of what she says. Okay, you can play it anytime now. Right.
The ball, the moment you've been waiting for. You were right. You were way right. You were wicked right yesterday when you sat here on TV and said, look, we need to wait till all the results are in. You said you thought that Bernie Sanders would make up that gap.
Okay, I'll turn the audio higher. I'm going to have to move one of my little boxes here. Which one? Can I move this? Yeah, okay. It's up, right? Fuck. There.
Basically tied.
I'll start it again.
You were right. You were way right. You were wicked right yesterday when you sat here on TV and said, look, we need to wait till all the results are in. You said you thought that Bernie Sanders would make up that gap. He all but has. It's basically tied with 97% of the precincts reporting. Your take on what this means.
Well, I want you to think about this from the perspective of Sanders supporters who do not have a lot of faith in this process or the Democratic Party.
Why would you?
With. All of this enabled Pete to basically claim a fake victory for days, enabled by the Iowa Democratic Party, the maker of this app, and the media that ran with headlines that were, you know, Pete's in the lead. And the people who are real victims here are who is putting Sanders over the top right now or close to the top right now. It's the immigrant workers and the Latino working class people that campaign painstakingly organized. And their voices were erased from this for days, which in my mind is downright criminal. So Pete is not a victim here. Pete got 3 days of saying he was the winner. There's a new tracking poll out that has him up 9 points in New Hampshire. So all of this completely goes to show you that Sanders supporters are going to be absolutely mistrustful of this process, and rightfully so. Why were these votes released in this way? Why were there, even after they came out, so many errors? How can anyone even have confidence that the numbers are right at this point? It's absolutely outrageous. And the fact that those immigrant workers had their voices robbed for so long is so wrong to me.
So he has just released, Jessica, these new fundraising numbers for January 2020, $25 million that he raised in January. 1.3 million donations, about 650,000 donors. I mean, those are, you know,
and
astronomical
it's definitely given the Sanders campaign a boost in terms of viability, in terms of fundraising, because that's typically what happens in these things. So I don't know what's going on here, man. This is fucking that clip is absolutely bust. My XSplit. Let me see if I can I delete that? Thank you. Right. we'll go back to Big Head for a bit. So you know, it's ridiculous what's happened, and that was actually a rare voice of clarity, because that's my assessment of what happened. It should be your assessment too, I think, when you lay all the evidence out in front of you. I think you'd have to be very blinkered, very stubborn in your worldview to think that what went on in Iowa isn't a disgrace and worthy of some sort of investigation to see if indeed the results are you know, if their integrity of the results actually holds up. So we can keep going on though. Let's just see some of the other stuff that went on. MSNBC actively called Bernie a liar. They just flat out called him a liar. I mean, this is staggering, right? When Bernie echoed what was going on. So let's just bring this down and pull it down here, and let's just have this. So this is the clip.
Caucuses.
Come on, you can do it. You can do it, XSplit. Do I have to play it a little small?
On Monday night, some 6,000 more Iowans came out on caucus night to support our candidacy than the candidacy of anyone else. And when 6,000 more people come out for you in an election than your nearest opponent, we here in northern New England call that a victory.
I can't find that. Who called it? It's not on my. Didn't he tie with Mayor Pete, like the 37-year-old, not even anymore mayor?
And you know what's sad? Not to tar him with the same brush, but I mean that how he's disingenuous, to say the least. He's not telling the truth. I mean, part of the problem with Iowa was, and everything we've learned about elections since 2000 is, what do you want to do? Simplify, simplify, simplify. What did the Iowa do in the caucuses? They made it more complex. They had 3 different metrics. So what Bernie is doing is counting that first metric of people who came in that night willing to support Bernie, but many of whom switched to Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete, my heart goes out to him, because having covered many Iowa caucuses and looked for that headline at 11 o'clock or midnight, he would have gotten these incredible headlines, the same headlines that Barack Obama had in 2008.
So there you have it. MSNBC, their coverage says that Bernie's a liar, okay, which he didn't say anything untrue in his statement. He said he had more votes. He did. He put the number at 6,000. And that by almost any other system, that would be considered a victory in a flippant and glib statement. And, of course, what the media do with the iconoclastic non-establishment candidates, they fact-check everything, even clear hyperbole and jokes. For example, when they did a fact-check on Donald Trump saying for a visiting college sports team, we've got burgers that you could stack a mile high, and they did a fact check saying you would need, 4 million burgers to get it 1 mile into the sky or something like that. This is what fact checking has become. It's not about fact checking. It's about basically undermining what candidates say, even when it's clear jokes, clear hyperbole, to try and sort of cut through the charisma and how that resonates with average American voters. They're doing it to Bernie. They did it to Trump. They still do it to Trump. And I think that clip's disgusting and indicative of all of the problems we've got with the mainstream media. Bernie didn't lie. That person said he's being disingenuous and then upgraded that, saying he's simply not telling the truth. You had the anchor that when it was thrown back to her, she went, well, I don't see that definition here, undermining what he was saying straight away. And then to sort of say, oh, I'm hugely sympathetic to Pete Buttigieg. What, you're hugely sympathetic to the guy with financial ties to the app that fucking ruined the whole caucus and should have invalidated the whole process, frankly? You're sympathetic to him, are you? That's where your heart lies. And it seems to me incredible. The idea as well, by the way, that they were sort of lamenting, oh, he would have had they're comparing him a lot to President Obama now, because if you remember how President Obama got elected, he had a very late run and wasn't polling great. So there is a little bit of a historical analogy with Pete Buttigieg. The similarities end there. They're not the same type of candidate in any way, shape, or form. But what they've started doing now, and they're going to keep running with this, so just clip this, keep it to yourselves, watch out for this. They will run with the comparisons to President Obama, Barack Obama when he was a candidate. They're going to run with that all the time. Pete Buttigieg will be compared to Obama endlessly, ad nauseum in the media, because they're now going to make a big push to try and tell people in the American voters that, hey, remember Obama, that president you all really like and kind of miss and opine for? Hey, we can have another one of those. It's going to happen. It'll be pushed. You can see through the trickery. You can see the strings. I know exactly what they're going to do. So just clip that. Watch out for that. That's happening. But they already make that little comparison there. And then they say, oh, but he was denied headlines. He wasn't denied headlines. He came out, declared himself a victor when he shouldn't have been able to know he was a victor, almost as if he sort of had some foreknowledge or inside information. You decide which one. And then ran with 3 days of headlines about how he'd won something before all the votes were counted. And when the votes were counted, it showed an ultra-thin margin between him and actually Bernie Sanders had more votes. It's just the dumb caucus system that had ultimately kind of denied him victory in the first place. That's before we even get into the shenanigans that very clearly went on. And, if you think there wasn't anything there, I got a bridge to sell you. So, anyway, let's also look at another great clip from MSNBC. Yes, you will see these recurring themes. This is a great clip. I love this clip because, remember, I did television for 2 years, over 2 years. I know when a producer is shouting in your ear and telling you to stop saying something. I know that sound. I know this reaction. Basically, to just give you what happens in this clip, he starts, the guy who's doing the big board all on MSNBC, he starts to talk about how there's some fuckery in the Iowa caucuses, and how there's been counting errors potentially, and he gets shouted at and told to shut the fuck up about that and never mention it again. What he's saying, factually accurate, but he literally gets shouted at by a producer and stops talking. There's no other interpretation.
1%. This is a difference of 2 state delegate equivalents. That is a tiny microscopic difference. That is the closest that would be if it was official. That would be the closest result in the history of the Iowa caucuses. You know, 4 years ago, Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton, I remember we were up all night. They didn't declare a winner till the next day. The margin then was 4 state delegate equivalents. That was by far the closest in history. We never thought we'd see another closer one, and yet it looks like we have. So close with those errors, Stephanie, with questions about whether the state party even followed the correct tabulating procedures for these satellite caucuses. Decision Desk just does not believe right now with 100%. Sorry, what's that?
It's the voice in your head.
Yeah.
Right now with 100%. Sorry, what's that?
It's the voice in your head.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No problem. But you were just saying the Decision Desk does not.
So yes, to have full confidence to declare a winner here, you can't have those kinds of inconsistencies.
All right. Joining us now to explain what.
So, yeah, shut it down, guys. The minute he starts to point out, and and again, I think that guy's had an unenviable job. He probably won't be back next time, or he'll probably get demoted to doing the fucking weather or something. Because once again, he's revealing what's behind the curtain, isn't he? Inadvertently, as soon as he starts talking about the irregularities in a 2-delegate difference, the closest in Iowa's history, this is you can see immediately. He's told shut it down. The woman goes, "Oh, you were saying." Yeah, and they wrap it up, and they wrap up the segment. And this is just consistent with all of the media coverage across CNN, across MSNBC. This is just how it's been. That, in fact, anybody pointing out these horrific irregularities, these horrific inconsistencies, these horrific conflicts of interest that shouldn't be going on in any form of democracy, it's just not going to be reported. They're not going to run with this story. We now need to go all in on Mayor Pete. Isn't that horrifying? Clinton, Hillary herself, of course, the Sith lady, came out and she had something to say. This is after Bernie had sort of done so well in Iowa. She came out, she undermined him before Iowa, she made a point of undermining him after Iowa. You would believe this bitch was running. It's fucking crazy what she's doing. She's former Dem presidential nominee Hillary Clinton furthered her comments discrediting Senator Bernie Sanders as a viable presidential candidate. I mean, the data shows you he's a viable presidential candidate. That doesn't lie. Even finishing with that narrow margin in Iowa, he was a viable presidential candidate when he was running up against Hillary Clinton, pushed her all the way, and she had to use every dirty trick in the book to fucking make sure she got the nomination. And he's very much a viable, if not the front candidate, if not the front runner this time around. She is coming out and publicly leveraging her weight and all the fucking losers who are, I'm still with her. I've actually got my fucking t-shirt from that time period, which I used to take great pride in walking around Atlanta with. And it's the I'm with Harambe. How I miss that meme. The I'm with Harambe t-shirt. All the fucking I'm still with her. I'm still with her. All of those fucking losers will never vote for Bernie because they think, even though Bernie cuckolded himself and fucking fell in line, they think Bernie and Hillary are these should be these sworn mortal enemies and never the twain shall meet. So she's getting involved in this race. It looks like my nightmare can't come true. I said it on the Surfs TV. I've said it on the stream many times. My nightmare, the visions that I had when I went to sleep, was Biden wins the nomination by a fucking landslide. Hillary Clinton comes out as the VP, and Biden has to basically retire for health problems, aka his clear early onset dementia, and that we do get the President Clinton that we all didn't want to avoid. Now it looks like that can't happen. I certainly hope that's true, but she's gonna get involved in some other capacity. Her and being a VP for Pete Buttigieg, that's possible. She did a fundraiser recently for reasons unknown. I'm telling you, just watch this fucking space. Like, she is not out of this by any stretch of the imagination. She is going to get on someone's ticket. I'm almost certain of it. But anyway, she came out and said his potential failure to deliver the moon would detract from efforts to rebuild public trust. First of all, when we want to talk about trustworthiness, it's absolutely unquestionable that Bernie Sanders is probably the most trustworthy candidate out of all of the viable Democratic candidates. He's the one with the 40-year voting record, consistent. He's the one that has, very publicly said for 2 campaigns now, he wants to take on Big Pharma, he wants to do this, he wants to do that. I don't agree with all of his ideas. I don't agree with some of his broader reforms. There are certainly some issues that I have with some of the things that he said in general, but overall, I think taking on Big Pharma, trying to revolutionize healthcare, and tackling some of the corruption in the banking system, I think these are all good things and very, very important things that would actually improve not just the average American life, but America in general. So, I think he is a viable candidate. He certainly seems a trustworthy candidate to me. You know what he's about. You can't say that about Pete Buttigieg. He got asked by somebody, listen, you've talked a lot about billionaire donors and money and all this. Well, why would you vote to outlaw billionaire donors? And he said, no, absolutely not. And he just walked on. So, and we know he's got more billionaire backers than almost any other candidate right now. And none of that's a coincidence that he is starting to surge in popularity at this key time because of those endorsements and those relationships. They've waited. They've seen the lay of the land. They've decided Pete's the way to go. And they're going to do all they can to artificially push him as the supposed Democrat of choice now. And yeah, it is. The parallels between this and 2016 are staggering and show the DNC don't know what the fuck is going on. It's already begun in the media, by the way. This little article should give you all a good chuckle. This is Vox, okay? Now remember, Vox are left-leaning, Vox are progressive. Shouldn't they be all in for Sanders? Oh no, they're corporate-owned media. So Pete Buttigieg is more electable than Bernie Sanders and more progressive than you think. The 4th in a Vox series making the best case for each of the top Democratic contenders. This went out on February the 4th after Iowa. It's incredible, really, the timing of this, that, while we've got Iowa looming and sort of in the background, we decide to run it just so happens it was Pete Buttigieg's turn right then and there. And, in what world does making a case for somebody to be elected mean you have to denigrate another candidate? You don't have to, right? I mean, you simply don't have to. You didn't say he's more electable than Biden. You didn't say, this was a specific targeted article to basically push Buttigieg specifically over Sanders. That is where the battle line is being drawn now in the DNC. That is where we're at. We'll get rid of this guy. Breitbart writer. Yep, also ultra left-leaning publication Daily Dot writer, written on both sides of it. You would assume that would sort of give me some broader perspective about how both sides operate, but you're not interested in that because you live in a little fucking demented bubble and just repeat talking points that you're fed by streamers that pander to you for money, grifters. I'm not one of those people, I'm afraid. This ain't the stream for you. Fuck off. Never return. Your opinion is worthless to me because you don't have a fully formed brain. There are fetuses out there with a higher IQ than you. Right, back to wrapping this up. So I did give you a little teaser, didn't I? I did give you a little teaser about how there was all this fuckery going on. And who do we blame? So the media, for me, should focus very clearly on the conflicts of interest I outlined earlier. They're not doing that. Why aren't they doing that? They're not doing that because that'd be too real. That'd be too much like real journalism. That'd be too much like actually, doing your job. That'd be too much like safeguarding the interests of the American people, a purpose that the mainstream media eschewed a long, long time ago. And now what they are is just corporate-owned, political propaganda outlets. That's true across the board. So, what they did do was they wanted to focus on, not on Pete Buttigieg's conflict of interest, not on the financial ties, not on the acronym Shadow Buttigieg campaign clusterfuck with the DNC chair being involved too. They didn't want to focus on any of that. Well, they wanted to focus on why couldn't people call in and get the results out in a more timely fashion. And that actually was an issue that happened on the night. I can show you a clip here where I got it. This is the lines were being clogged, and in one of the most embarrassing moments probably of CNN's coverage, the guy from one of the caucuses that was reporting the results got hung up by the Democratic chair live on air while talking to Wolf Blitzer.
Sean, have you gotten any explanation at all as to what's going on?
No, I have not. No. I'm just waiting on hold and doing my best to report the results from my precinct.
What are you hearing? I know you're listening to a conversation from the Iowa Democratic Party.
So this is a real coincidence, Wolf. I just got off hold just now, so I've got to get off the phone to report the results.
All right, go ahead. Report your results. Can we listen in as you report them, Sean?
Yep.
All right,
cool.
let's listen.
All right. Okay. Hi. Hello? They hung up on me. They hung up on me. Okay. I've got to get back in line on hold.
Oh.
They just hung up.
It's so frustrating indeed.
So frustrating indeed. I mean, first of all, like, what's your priority here? Talking to fucking CNN or getting your job done. But equally, I will say, it's not like they stuck around and gave him a particularly long time.
That's what I'm hearing.
Two hellos for what should be an essential part of the process. The sole reason the phone line exists anyway. It's not like this is a general customer service hotline or a fucking drive-through. You know, this is a line dedicated to people calling in and giving the results from their caucuses, right? But anyway, something about that. That phone number, because the DNC is incompetent as well as malicious and malevolent. Thanks a lot again, Welbers, for the 10 gifted subs, buddy. That's 20 tonight. Really appreciate it, my man. They put the number out, the phone number, publicly. It was publicly available. People found it, and so people maliciously used it and were calling it and clogging it up, making it difficult to get through. That might even explain why she was quick in hanging up, because who knows how many bullshit calls had sort of gone through and deadlines they'd had earlier in that night. I might be willing to give them the benefit of the doubt there, but the number should never have been publicly available anyway, and certainly not advertised and announced. This clip as well just sort of underlines that guy who got hung up on went and talked about it a little bit later on. This was put out. He was talking to Rachel Maddow about it. We're going to cover her in a second.
By Sean Sebastian, who's a caucus secretary in Ames, Iowa tonight, which is in Story County, Iowa. In Precinct 1-1, he was the caucus secretary. And Sean, I really appreciate you making time to join us tonight. What can you tell us about what happened in terms of reporting results from your precinct?
Well, I think as you just mentioned, the app that we were told to download just hasn't been working. So in the handbook that we were given a hotline to call to report the results. And I've just been on hold pretty much since 8:30 trying to report these results in.
You've been on hold for 2 hours trying to report the results from your one precinct?
Yes. Yep. So I was, they say that they'll be with me in the order in which, I got on hold. And there was a moment where they did connect for like 1 second about half an hour ago. And then I just wasn't responsive quick enough and they hung up on me. So I'm back in line.
Sean, in terms of your precinct, do you mind if I ask you to tell us what the results were in your precinct?
Yeah, so, the caucus system is really unnecessarily complicated, as you know, and as you're dealing with right now. So I can tell you on the first alignment, Bernie Sanders had 111 people. Elizabeth Warren had 82 people.
This is the guy who showed you tweeting it out earlier.
47 people. And after all the second alignments and all the math, it ended up with Sanders with 2 delegates, Warren with 2 delegates, and Buttigieg with 2 delegates.
Sean Sebastian.
So even though Sanders had more than double the number of people after the first alignment than Pete Buttigieg, they ended up with the same number of delegates.
Sean, thank you for helping us understand what happened tonight. And we're going to go now to...
Yeah, thanks indeed. Thanks indeed. So this is what Rachel Maddow took from that. was she basically decided to conduct one of her rigorous investigations. The same piece of shit propagandist that claimed to have evidence of, fuckery in Trump's tax returns and then had to humiliatingly admit on air that he actually paid more in taxes than several of the Democrat candidates did, according to tax records. The same, person that pushed Russian collusion as a matter of fact for 2.5 years in constant Russia content. She should have been took off the airwaves. She should have been cast out of broadcast television. She has told more lies to the American people than almost any other mainstream anchor in television, yet not only does she still have a job, she still remains the face of the network. That's all you really need to know about MSNBC. Some of the people that they employ are absolutely despicable, including Joy Reid, somebody who has been caught on record as having lied, having peddled 9/11 conspiracy theories, homophobic comments. These people never get penalized. These people are never held to a standard that you or I would be as just public figures, and they're put on network television, ideologues that basically get paid to lie to you on a daily basis, and the wheels keep turning. Anyway, Rachel Maddow decided to do one of her incredible investigative pieces of journalism. And what she decided to do was, on the basis that there were about 12, 20 comments on 4chan in a thread of people saying, hey, I've got the number, why don't we clog the lines? She wanted to put all of the focus on Iowa being a clusterfuck down to 4chan. Yes, that's absolutely true. I'm going to show you the clip now. Try not to laugh. This is classic
NBC News
Rachel Maddow.
Since that initial reporting, NBC News and other news organizations have tracked down messages like these from pro-Trump political message boards online, which show Trump supporters in real time on caucus night, not only posting and reposting the hotline number that precinct chairs were supposed to use to call in results to the Iowa Democratic Party, but explicitly encouraging one another to call and call and call again, specifically to clog up the lines, specifically to mess with the Democrats' ability to carry out the caucus. Quote, F them up. Keep clogging the lines. Keep clogging the lines. The results are not being reported because the lines are clogged. Keep clogging the lines. Now, it is clear that that is not the only thing that went wrong with the tabulation of the Iowa caucus results on Monday.
You think?
But that, it turns out, is one of the things that went wrong. And it is the kind of thing we have seen before. The next Democratic nominating contest in 2020 is Tuesday in New Hampshire. New Hampshire state officials today held a press conference to assure everybody in the state and around the country that what happened in Iowa isn't going to happen there, that they have every confidence that absolutely nothing will go wrong with the primary in New Hampshire on Tuesday. One reporter asked explicitly whether the 2002 phone jamming scandal from New Hampshire might be a worrying past precedent for that state, given what just appears to have happened in Iowa. New Hampshire's Republican governor responded to that question by dismissing the matter entirely, saying that issue from nearly 20 years ago just doesn't apply today.
It doesn't.
It should be noted that the New Hampshire governor right now is a man named Chris Sununu, who is the younger brother of former Senator John Sununu, who is the guy who benefited from the illegal phone jamming scheme for which people went to prison in New Hampshire in that election 18 years ago.
I mean, far be it from me to say that a 20-year-old act of political corruption, you'll notice as well, we sent people to prison from the Republican Party for fucking with the integrity of an election. How times have changed. To compare it to the 2002 New Hampshire phone jamming scandal is crazy because it's not the same thing. The number was publicly put out. But then also to say that the guy who's a relative of this guy, of the thing that happened 20 years ago, being still involved in politics in that area means it's probably going to happen again. They're already... listen... The dark arts that the fucking Democratic Party, the DNC, engage in on a daily basis, it's necromancy. It's insane. And Rachel Maddow, one of the propaganda arms, coming out basically giving disinformation to the American people. It's incredible to me. It is absolutely incredible that this is the type of thing they peddle, that they're telling the American voters, don't look over here with the Pete Buttigieg stuff and the money. Don't look at all of that. It's 4chan, it's Russians. That's what you need to be worried about. Again, if 4chan and some Russian Facebook accounts, pages can compromise the integrity of your election, which, by the way, you're doing a great job of compromising it yourselves, just the DNC alone, then you have a fundamental problem. You need to be looking at that, not constantly harping about it. But of course, the propaganda has been deployed. Now, this is the hilarious part, and this is where we're going to end talking about the nightmarish clusterfuck that is Iowa, which, of course, is much like 2016. Bernie gets fucked out of a win, and we're blaming 4chan and trolls. But this is just so fucking chef's kiss at the end, and I can't wait to see what comes out of this. Journalists are going to try and get 4chan users to talk to them about clogging the Iowa call lines. This is it. Following the story about 4chan users clogging the Iowa call lines, we're now seeing reporters from major outlets posting in chans saying they're working on a story and sharing their contact information. If this is an indication of how major outlets are going to engage with disinformation, we're doomed. So literally, hi, my name's John from the Washington Post. Here's my cell phone number, 4chan. Please call me. Like, are you fucking for real right now? Like, it's just going to be My Little Pony porn, bestiality, swastikas, racist Pepes. Like, what the? Are you guys fucking idiots? Haven't you learned anything? By the way, I can't speak for 4chan, but I've been around on the internet a little bit. I saw the rise of 4chan. I've seen everything they've ever been involved in. I've seen how it's incredible to think one forum has consistently shaped cultural moments through, coming together through collective grassroots movements, and this can be to the very positive. Anonymous used to assemble on there back when it had a bit more bite and teeth to what it wanted to achieve, to silly things like just skewing polls. So you had the Mountain Dew drink or whatever it was being changed to something very unsavory. I won't repeat here, but this is not how. Like, how have you not fucking figured out by now, of all time, like decades we're talking, and you still don't know how to interact with these people, or how, or that you probably just shouldn't bother, because 4chan has utter contempt for you, and rightly so, in the same way I have utter contempt for you and what the journalistic profession has become. The idea that you are, even if you get a reply and somebody wants to talk to you about why they did it and give you statements, it's going to be full of lies and disinformation, and we have over 9,000 penises and all this gibberish, and then you're going to run it, and then on top of that, you're probably going to cry about being harassed when they send you fucking hate mail from the fucking contact information you provided on a public messaging board, you fucking idiots. This is the state of your media. So, that's Iowa. That's Iowa. That's all the nonsense that went on there. I hope, I know it's been about 90 minutes or so, kind of breaking it all down, but that's pretty much all you need to know about what went on. It looks like a robbery of Bernie Sanders. Even if you believe in the integrity of the results, you absolutely must question the process. It's just crazy to me. Interestingly enough, as well, I did see that when it looked like Bernie Sanders was way out in front, before we were waiting for the rest of the votes to be counted, wink, wink, the media also started putting out think pieces saying, hey, Iowa's not all that important. Don't worry about Iowa. So, yeah, it's a fucking rigged game again, guys. It's a scam. It's bullshit. You guys have just got to fucking, if this impacts on some people. There's a regular on my stream who I obviously won't name, but got in touch with me and said, hey, I was at the caucus. I know some of you guys are very close to this and close to this political process, and it must be deeply upsetting to see kind of what's been going on with this. But the bottom line is, from my observations, I think we should be looking at what's going on with Pete Buttigieg, why he's being pushed, and we need to look at why, once again, the DNC is working against one of its own candidates. That is so insane to me. And when you consider, people all said, oh, that's just Clinton's power in the DNC. She's obviously still liked, still very well connected, and as I believe will still be involved at some point. But this isn't just about Clinton. This is about the DNC holistically and the DNC media machine holistically. For whatever reason, they were not going to let Bernie come out on top. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And that means that people are going to have to fight harder. People are going to have to push harder and do more, because you're going to see shit like this. I dread to think what's going to happen at New Hampshire, and keep in mind the snowball effect of what happened in Iowa, as we heard, is that Pete Buttigieg has had a 9-point boost in the polls ahead of New Hampshire. So, this, because people want, as I said, people psychologically want to be on the winning team. And if you're not for Sanders, then you have to go with the other candidate, and now it's Buttigieg. It's fucking ridiculous. It's insane. He cannot be elected president. He will not beat Trump. So, what a fucking nightmare. What a nightmare the whole thing has been from start to finish.